A new protocol goes into effect in Argentina to stop protests. Many call it repressive. Plus, the Colombian government says a FARC member has breached a contract. For teleSur's English, I'm Cody Weddle. Thanks for joining us. This is from the South. The Argentine government, led by President Mauricio Macri, has announced that it will not tolerate protests blocking the roadways. The Security Ministry, Patricia Bullrich, explained that with a new protocol approved by her office, policemen will give protesters 5 minutes to clear roadblocks. The move comes as more protests are expected next week after the government failed to negotiate with public workers on the percentage of a wage increase. And a 3-year-old girl has become the first patient to use medical marijuana in Argentina. Now, the girl was prescribed marijuana to treat a rare epileptic disorder. The parents of the girl said that after trying the treatment for 12 days, the girl's convulsions have stopped. But getting the prescription was not easy there for the family, which had to request permission from the local government and wait for authorities to consult with experts in the Supreme Court of Justice. And ahead of the key March 23rd deadline for the final agreements of Colombia's conflict, a new bump is creating some concerns there. The government has accused leader Iván Márquez of breaching a deal they had already had in place. Now, Márquez was visiting territory controlled by the FARC guerrillas, where he spoke about the future peace agreement, but was accompanied by armed men. Now, according to the government, Márquez's visit was allowed under the condition that he would not use weapons or armed men during the event.
The group led by Iván Márquez have violated the agreed rules of not having contact with civilians, much less participating with uniformed and armed men at a public event with the community.
And one of the key players in the peace-building process, which will come after a final agreement is reached in Havana, is the Ministry of Defense and the National Police. However, a scandal is shaking the police force there. With more now, we turn to our correspondent. She's Natalia Margarita reporting from Bogota.
Colombia's national police is in the eye of the storm. Its head General Rodolfo Palomino announced his resignation after the Inspector General opened a disciplinary investigation into his alleged role in a male prostitution ring, dubbed as the Fellowship of the Ring.
De una investigación formal.
Palomino is also facing allegations of illicit enrichment and the phone taping of journalists attempting to prove the existence of the prostitution ring, in which high-ranking officers, including Palomino, allegedly traded political favors and money for sex with police cadets.
What we have nowadays is a national police that is linked to cases of drug trafficking, illegal wiretapping, and surveillance of journalists and opposition leaders, plus the latest case of a prostitution network, which is something extremely serious.
Both Colombia's president and the Minister of Defense rapidly accepted Palomino's resignation and appointed another chief of police. Yet many consider that this episode has just revealed a crisis in the police institution that the government must carefully review.
The government must get on top of a police restructuring, the vacation training of cadets, as well as the military manuals of the Ministry of Defense that includes those of the national police functions that must be reviewed, especially in the wake of the mistrust of the citizens towards the police, which is something that have gone underreported.
The situation within the Colombia's security forces, including the national police that depends on the Ministry of Defense, is particularly sensitive as a final peace deal nears.
In our view, that is something that cannot be solved just by removing the head of the police. Colombia's national police must turn into a trustworthy civilian body, especially in the wake of the peace construction period that will follow the final peace agreements. The police must be at the service of citizens, playing a role in human security that has nothing to do with repression and violence against civilians.
This latest episode follows scandals of bribery and corruption that have reached various Colombian public institutions, including labor and sexual abuses that recently led to the resignation of the country's ombudsman. Natalia Margarita, teleSur, Bogotá.
Costa Rica's President Luis Guillermo Solís is pushing for Central American unity during his visit to Guatemala. Now, the president delivered powerful statements focusing on making integration mechanisms more dynamic there. Critics believe that the president is trying to secure support for a program currently underway to fly thousands of Cuban migrants stranded in Costa Rica to the United States. Soltis highlighted that the ideal of unity should guide the efforts being carried out by the region.
We can do a lot of things together, but it requires an integration system that actually works. An integration system in movement that would take the lead, that would represent the will of going forward with Central American unity as a driving idea for our governments.
Teams of independent observers from across Latin America will monitor Sunday's referendum in Bolivia. Now, a group of more than 20 representatives from South America's social movements will join members of the Organization of American States to ensure the vote runs smoothly. Our Bolivian correspondent now, Dimitri O'Donnell, reports.
A team of independent observers from across South America have arrived in Bolivia ahead of Sunday's referendum. Representatives from several Latin American social movements say their role is to ensure transparency across all 9 of Bolivia's electoral departments on voting day.
Come from 6 countries: Argentina, Uruguay, Peru, Chile, Ecuador and Venezuela. There's a team of more than 20 overseas. We are going to be touring here on Sunday, looking at places where people are voting to check that everything is developing with total normalcy and transparency.
Evo Morales' government is representative of the social and popular movements. And because we are observers from the popular movements, this is critical to the electoral process. We will learn how to improve our systems, and this is why we're here.
Separately, another team of observers from the Union of South American States will also monitor how the referendum vote is being conducted.
The mission has 22 members, and we are going to cover 6 departments. We are not going to cover the departments of Beni, Pando, and Tarija, but we are covering 90% of the electoral area in Bolivia.
The campaign for both sides has now officially ended. It's obligatory for Bolivians to vote in elections, and more than 6 million will head to thousands of polling stations across the country in 2 days' time. The public has been asked if they want to change the constitution and abolish 2-term presidential limits. The polls open at 8 a.m. local time on Sunday and close 8 hours later. According to the last survey of public opinion, the result is expected to be very close. Dimitri O'Donnell, teleSur's, La Paz.
Russian gas giant Gazprom signed a landmark deal with the Bolivian state-owned YPFB oil and gas company. Now, the deal, made up of several agreements, is set to boost Bolivia's gas production capacity. Both Bolivia and Russia have some of the highest gas reserves in the world. President Evo Morales will meet Russian President Vladimir Putin, who will visit the country as part of a bilateral energy summit. Ministers and soldiers are taking part in a massive campaign to teach school children about the Zika virus and how to fight it. This is in Brazil. The campaign is part of the efforts being made by the government as the country registers most cases of the Zika virus here in Latin America. The World Health Organization says there is increasing evidence of a link between the Zika virus and microcephaly, a brain disease in babies. However, it could take months to prove that link. Experts have questioned the link given rare cases registered in Colombia and in Brazil as well. The relationship between the virus and that brain disease is vital to determine the effects that the Zika virus can have on human health. Thousands of Peruvians are protesting President Ollanta Humala's decision to privatize water. Our correspondent there, Raul Mora, now follows the massive marches that took place there in the capital of Lima.
Thousands of people marched in the capital of the Andean country to protest plans by the government to privatize water. The demonstration was organized by community organizations and the Union of Public Water Workers of Lima.
There are 5 private initiatives that, through the pro-investment agency, are disarticulating the state-owned company and self-sustainable private initiatives. These projects would allow privatization and concessions for 30 years.
Under a temperature of 34 degrees, the demonstrators advanced in a peaceful manner through the main avenues of the city.
because it is the right of the people. The state has to give water to all of us poor people. That is what we want, and improvements in the service.
We want water because up to now the government has not given us water or a proper drainage service. We live in a hill and we carry our water with a bucket, and that is why we are here, because we need water, which is life.
We don't think that the mistakes made by Sedapal's administration should not be used as an excuse to privatize the company. By doing so, the price would increase for thousands of people.
Even though it was a massive march, there was no presence of local TV channels. The organizers of the march claimed to be prepared to continue with a series of protests with the goal to prevent the privatization of water services for Lima. Rael Mora, TeleSur, Peru.
U.S. warplanes have carried out airstrikes in Libya for the first time, targeting the Islamic State group and ISIS-aligned fighters. Now, according to U.S. military sources, the operation hit an ISIL training camp and was aimed at killing a Tunisian citizen accused of helping to organize 2 attacks on tourists back in 2015. According to the White House, the group posed a direct threat to the United States.
We've made clear that we need to confront ISIL wherever it rears its head. They have posed a direct threat to the United States. They have encouraged attacks against the United States and our allies, and we're going to continue to confront it to protect our national security. And this was an instance where we saw an opportunity to strike at ISIL in Libya, and we carried out that strike, and we feel confident this was a success.
A Palestinian journalist's 3-month hunger strike has prompted stern questions from the United Nations and the European Union over Israel's detention policy. Mohammed Al-Kik was detained by Israeli forces in November and has been placed in what Israel calls administrative detention. Now, this allows a prisoner to be held for up to 60 days without any charge and can be extended with court approval. Al-Kik's wife, along with many others, are calling for his release as his health deteriorates day by day.
We are very worried about his medical condition. According to the physicians, Mohammed may die any time. He is at risk of a sudden death.
A Kurdish military group has claimed responsibility for the bombing in Turkey's capital, Ankara, that happened earlier this week. Now, the group is called the TAK, and according to their website, the bombing was in response to the policies of President Tayyip Erdogan. Now, it added that their attacks will continue. The group stated the bomber was a 26-year-old Turkish national. Thousands of Yemenis demonstrated in the streets of Sana'a to show support for Houthi rebels. The rebels have pledged to liberate the city of Marib, which was seized by Saudi troops and armed loyalists of President Abu Mansur Hadi over the summer. Much of the Marib province is now under the control of Saudi forces and Hadi's troops. However, the capital of most of the country remains under Houthi control. Uganda's election has been a chaotic one, with delays, protests, and even the arrest of the current president's main challenger. As a result, security there remains tight while the votes are still being counted. Current President Yoweri Museveni reportedly has a solid lead and may be able to extend his already 30-year rule. However, the opposition claims there will be fraud. The opposition candidate has been detained 3 times in the past week. The people of Niger will be heading to the polls on Sunday to elect the next president. However, the election campaign has been tense between rival parties in the country, known for its poverty. Adding to the current tension, concerns are high given that there have been 3 coups in recent years. Formula One team Manor has appointed Indonesia's Rio Hayanto as one of its race drivers for the coming season. The 23-year-old will become the first Indonesian to compete in F1 upcoming season that begins March 20th in Melbourne, Australia. Hayanto has spent the past 4 seasons racing in the GP2 series and has won 3 races in 2015 to secure 4th place in the season standings. To Kill a Mockingbird author Harper Lee has died at the age of 89. The news was confirmed by the mayor's office in her hometown of Monroeville, Alabama. Lee's book was hugely successful and was even made into a film in 1962. The novel is currently being adapted for theater. And that's what we're covering on this Friday. Thanks for joining us. This is From the South for teleSur English. I'm Cody Weddle. Be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Have a great weekend.